So Abhijit, coming again to the need for a demand stimulus, is that the key to reviving our economy and for achieving this projected V-shaped bounce back for India?
I think demand is the issue. And demand has been very low, partly because incomes have been low, partly because people are also panicked and they're holding on to whatever savings they have because they're not sure how long this will last. So they are unemployed and they don't know when they'll get their jobs, and therefore they're not spending. You know, if you have 5,000 rupees in the bank and you don't know if it's going to be 3 months before you can find a job or not, then you don't spend. So people are, I think that where the spending is slow, especially is among the lower to middle income, low middle incomes categories. You see people are beginning to buy cars again, but not so many bicycles. That's very much the pattern that we see, and it seems to me that there is real worry that the mass market goods are not going to have enough demand.
One factor that is of concern about the impact of the budget, while the focus on spending more on construction and infrastructure is widely agreed to be a really good positive step, but there's a lag effect with construction and infrastructure, and the impact on boosting the economy may take a little while. So the real benefits will only be felt in the medium term and of course in the long term, not so much in the short term. And really vulnerable and poor families need help right now, the short-term help they need.
I think construction, as you said absolutely correctly, this kind of construction, especially which is ambitious, long-term, we're going to create hubs for textiles or automotive or other things. Those are they're not things you do in a day. Those hubs need to be, you have to make a good plan, you have to acquire land, you have to think about the interlinkages, the roads that go out in and out of those things, the airports. It's even just thinking about exactly how you're going to do it will take some time. In the meanwhile, money won't be spent. And if money is not spent, then that doesn't do anything. So my fear with this kind of supply side approach is more that it's really not designed for a demand crisis. They could have. So I see the model. I see that if this was construction, if the government said I'll start construction tomorrow, I think that would have real consequences. That would also be maybe a waste, in the sense that you don't want to necessarily just throw money at things. So it might have been better to actually give people some earnings, some urban and Narega or something, just some form of earnings quickly, temporarily maybe, to revive the economy, and then get investment going and do the long-term plans at the same time. That's not the way the government has gone.
One of the issues that has come up is that, okay, India is going to go in for construction and supply side stimulus, and that's great. But as you mentioned earlier, the size and the scale of what India does on anything like on construction is just not large enough compared to the scale and projects in many other countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are always very, we say we do supply side, but when China does supply side, it's 10 times relative to GDP per capita, is 10 times as big. It's just, they have always been more willing to just take a big gamble. So we take very small, in the end, we take very small gambles. And those small gambles, we're always, very careful to check off all the boxes. But that means that the supply side boost is not that great. It's not going to be so much. It's going to be, it's a more a sign that this is what the government wants us to do, and it's going to, maybe it's a useful signal to send to markets, and the markets liked it. But I don't think it is the case that this is going to be a massive reframing of the Indian infrastructure scene. It's always going to be a kind of wrinkle on what happens in the private sector. So we really always relying on the private sector. When the private sector moves, we move. When it doesn't, we move very slowly. And I think we really need to focus on the private sector investing. So I think whatever the government does, I think the money for the SME sector, etc., for more credit to them is not a bad idea.